I am a money coach and a wealth manager. And today is all about owning your power with money. So if somebody wants to drop in the chat, maybe where you're calling from and what it means to you to own your power with money. If anybody wants to add that in. Right. So a lot of the times we feel that money is such a confusing topic, and October is really financial planning month. Again, I congratulate you on being here. Money can sometimes be a bit of a taboo subject, a scary subject. So the fact that you're here really shows that you're showing up for yourself. And for anyone who wants to, just share in the chat where you're calling from and what it means to you to own your power with money. What is one thing that would mean? Okay, got a quiet group. Cool. Let's move on to the next slide then. Oh, learning from previous mistakes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I call those times, those moments when we pause and look back at what we've learned as kind of like the compost, like those mistakes are not really mistakes. They're more like lessons learned. So I love that you say that in there, like learning from previous mistakes. Having knowledge on how to grow your money and how to invest it, managing a business, you're definitely making the money work for you. Also from Chicagoland, learning how to invest, managing a business, learning money patterns, what serves you, what doesn't, having a game plan for your goals, right? And one of the biggest things when it comes to goals is even knowing what they are, right? Setting goals that are measurable. Freedom to do what you want. I love that. I love the idea that we can do anything we want. Maybe we can't do everything. It's kind of like you can eat whatever you want, just don't eat everything. It's kind of the same with money. It's learning, given the amount that we have, how do we put systems in place so that we're making the best use of it? Feeling frazzled when looking at budgets, too many transactions. I definitely understand that. So thank you everyone for sharing some of what owning your power with money looks like for you. In today's workshop, we're going to do a couple of exercises for you to own your power with money. And the workshops are usually pretty interactive because when we're learning this subject, there's so many things going on that it's helpful for us to actually put things in place. So again, today's going to be pretty interactive, including these exercises. And at the end, and the later half, we're going to go over, I have a bit of a map that I walk people through of the things that you need to have in place to really get to financial well-being. Okay. And you've already stepped a little bit into this of what it means to own your power with money. I've seen a lot of you contribute what it means to you. And when I, as a money coach, have people come work with me, they often come because they've tried to figure it out on their own. They either bought a book or they listened to a podcast and they either haven't put the things in place or they have, every time they try learning about it, they have more questions than answers. But owning your power with anything is really about saying, I belong in this area of my life. Right? As women, there's research that when you measure the financial literacy, how comfortable people are with financial terms, and you compare how men respond to how women respond, men often say that they understand things better than they actually do. Right? They'll say I know everything about compound interest. And then you ask them to explain it and they don't know what it means. And it's kind of the opposite with women. Women will think they understand less than they actually do. Right? So we just have to think about that, how we need to give ourselves credit for what we already know how to do. When you think about money management or economics, the word economics comes from, it's Greek, and it's household management. And all of us here, we know how to do money management, right? Maybe not up to the level that we wanted to have it at, but you have to recognize the skills you already have in place, right? So owning your power with money is really seeing that this is an area of your life that you can feel confident in, that you can have the skills for. It's not that we have to know everything about money. I don't need you to know what a Sharpe ratio is for your investments, but I do need you to know how to ask questions, right? Whenever you're working with a financial professional, it's really important to make sure you want to, like, if they're saying something to you and it doesn't make sense, it's on them. They need to explain it more clearly, right? And someone asked if I would speak about wealth. Well, how do you measure wealth, right? I get to work with people at the ultra high net worth level and people who are living on benefits, right? So in my position as both a wealth manager and a person who's a money coach, like I have a huge reach on it. And I invite you, like, how do you define wealth, right? Wealth could be like having freedom with your time. It could be having a certain number in your bank, having a certain number in your investments. But again, thinking about, like, how do you reach your goals? You have to define what your goals are, like SMART measurement, right? Are they specific, measurable, attainable? It's the same thing with wealth. When we're talking about money, I want us to think about how our body responds to it. Part of my training is in compassionate inquiry, because money can be such a fraught subject. It can make us be so tense that we have to understand how to have our body be with us as we're doing this. As we're having this conversation, either today or with a financial manager in the future, I want you to check in with yourself and see if any of these automatic body responses are coming up, right? Because money is related to our survival in many cases, our brain can get overactivated. It can just be too much. And we might go back into our reptilian brain where it's harder to make decisions, where we go into survival mode. If you feel that you want to fight something I said, that you want to run away from the conversation, that you're feeling kind of frozen, like maybe a little bit sleepy, you want to leave the room. Or also when you're feeling connected to everybody around you, these are body responses that it's important for us to acknowledge and to know, right? And there's really nothing you need to do to change them. Like when you're in your reptilian brain and you're feeling too tense, too agitated, just noting it down, like grabbing your journal and writing down, what was it that was said? What memory came up that put you into the state of mind, so that you start to kind of loosen up those patterns. And this applies to the workshop, the next hour, the next 50 minutes that we're going to be spending together. But this also applies to you when you go back to your budget, when you start to have a conversation with your partner, with your employer, with a client around money. Check in with yourself. How is your body responding to it? When we skip our body's response, we often are in survival brain, creating the same patterns we had before, as opposed to slowing down and seeing what's going to move us forward towards our goals, right? Again, because money is related to our survival and our well-being, there's a lot of moving parts, which I'm sure all of us have experienced whenever we had to have a conversation with a loved one around money. Okay. And I see a question in the chat about, like, how do you go about connecting to a financial advisor? Right? So think about a financial advisor is someone who helps you manage your investments. That's like specifically a financial advisor. A financial planner is someone this is financial planning month, and financial planning month includes actually like all of the things when it comes to money. A financial planner will look at your investing, your taxes, your estate planning, right? How are things titled if you were to pass away? Your insurance needs, how are you covered in case of emergencies? Like all of the things when it comes to money. That's a certified financial planner, which is part of my training. A financial advisor often may only focus on investments. I also want people to think about two terms, and I don't have these up on the board, but one of them is fiduciary. The other one is suitability. Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing here because this is like a key part. A fiduciary is someone who is liable for your well-being, meaning if they give you bad advice, you can sue them, right? I am a fiduciary. I need to know about your life before I give you advice to make sure it's the right choice for you. Suitability means that it matches it matches well enough. It's a good enough fit. One of my favorite examples about this is from Michael Kitces, who's a big writer in the financial planning field. And Michael Kitces says that, imagine you're going to go buy a sweater, right? You're going to go buy a sweater. You'll go to someone who's a fiduciary. The fiduciary is going to ask you about like the other clothes in your closet. What's the weather where you live? Do you want it to be free trade? Are you allergic to any materials? Like the fiduciary is going to go out of their way. It's like very boutique, very custom to make sure that it's the right sweater. A suitability person will give you a sweater, whether it fits, whether you're allergic to the material, whether any of it, it doesn't matter. You can't sue them. Right? So it's very important that if you're going to hire someone to do something for you when it comes to finances, make sure that they are a fiduciary. And I'm going to type that out in the chat. So fiduciary, right? That's a key term when you're hiring someone. So again, if you're going to go look for a financial advisor, look for someone who's a fiduciary. Make sure you understand how they're getting paid, right? Are they getting paid based on what they offer you? On what, like the insurance product that they sell, the annuity, the investments, or are they getting paid on advice? Well, how they're getting paid, it's important for you to understand it. It doesn't mean that one way is better than the other. I know people who charge in very many different ways who are people that I would send my family to, right? Resources that are available to find a financial advisor are the Garrett Planning Network, and I'm putting this in the chat. Garrett Planning Network, XYPN is another really good one. NAPFA. These are all associations where you can find financial advisors that are local to you, que hablan español, that can speak Spanish. I'll have my contact information at the end of this. And I'm also going to share with everyone right now that if you have, that I offer everyone a 30-minute one-to-one conversation. If there's anything that I'm saying right now that maybe later on, you're like, oh, I want to talk to her a little bit more, come in. 30 minutes of my time for free, because I know that sometimes we just need to talk to a professional to make the next step, right? Are there services that are affordable? There are services, it really depends on what you're looking for, right? Because and I'll share resources at the end of this, but I'll actually share them now because that's the benefit of this being live, that we can share what people are looking for. Let me just zoom over to this one. This is the one I want to share. Is everyone able to see it? Yes. These are some resources that are free, right? F-R-E-E. We all love that four-letter word. These are wonderful places to start. The book by Ramit Sethi, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, is super helpful. It's one of my favorite 101 books. He's a little bit bro-y. He's a tech bro. Like he made his money in Silicon Valley, and some of the things that he says, you're like, this does not make sense for me. I'm a single mother with 2 children and my husband doesn't pay alimony, right? But yet there are still things in it that I find really helpful. Savvy Helpline. This is a service called Savvy Women. And they offer, I actually volunteer with them. So they offer free 1-hour consultations with CFPs, with insurance agents, with estate lawyers, right? There's a lot of resources available out there that are free, that are a good place to get started. When you want something more personalized, you may need to pay. But again, start out with the free resources to find out what it is you need, right? It's kind of like before you buy a lotion at Bath and Body Works, you kind of try it out, see if you like how it smells. That's what we're doing here. And that's what it means to own your power with money. It means that you go out there and you try it out. One of my favorite resources for learning how to invest, it's actually a YouTube series, and it was put together by Wealth Simple. Now, one caveat about Wealth Simple, they are a Canadian company. So some of the things that they talk about are specific to Canada. However, let me make sure, yeah. However, the concepts themselves are universal. This is a 1 hour class, and it's divided into 10 sessions, right? So it's 10 minutes. If you promise yourself, okay, over the next 10 days, I will watch one of these videos. After 10 days, after 1 hour, you'll know much more than most people, honestly, because a lot of us are so put off by investing. It feels like it's somebody else's world where we don't take the time to learn. And I really love Wealth Simple because their videos are super cute. They're super cute. They're super funny. They include a lot of cats. Like they're just like relatable. The last one that I want to highlight is Bari Tessler. Bari Tessler is a somatic therapist, and she's a somatic financial therapist. She did a lot of work as a bookkeeper. And part of what I talked about at the beginning, that fight, flight, freeze, the body's responses, how our heart can race during this conversation. She does a lot of work on that. And of course, you can go to my website, allthecolors.com. I'm also another resource, but I wanted to make sure that I answered that chat question. Let me take a look at the chat again before I go back. Okay. So now I want us to jump into a money exercise. And this is going to be part of the interactive thing of like, when it comes to money, what are all of the things that come to mind? What are all of the questions? And I've got a couple of them up on the list just to kind of start jogging your memory of like the technical parts of it. But again, if you're able to, and you have a journal with you, start to write down, like, what are the questions that come up for money? Where this is what I call our Marie Kondo exercise. You know how Marie Kondo will say, like, you want to organize your closet, go through and take out all of the shirts and then divide the shirts to see which ones you want to keep, which ones are no longer bringing you joy. Right? Is this making sense? I see a little bit of confusion. Yeah, okay. Let's see, what is coming up in the chat? Peace of mind, empowered. Right, so those are some of the feelings that can come from having money, from money. What else? Scarcity mindset, responsibility, having credit. Yeah, relationship. So as you're writing this down, and a high yield savings account, I love that, Yasari. You're really throwing in some concrete technical terms. And I'm inviting people to write it down because there's something about using our hands that also brings us into our body, right? It brings us into our body, and it'll let you know how much you already know about money. Even for anybody who's watching the recording, do this for yourself. Think of all of the terms that you've heard, maybe in a commercial, maybe when you were talking to your employer about your benefits. I want you to think of all the things you already know about money, right? HSA funds, 401k, taxes. These are great. Keep rolling them in. And let's do 2 minutes. Let's do 2 minutes so that people really get a chance to download from their mind cost of living. And I'm going to put on I'm going to stop sharing and put in a little song for us, okay? I love this question that just came in. Any specific nervous system exercises around money freeze pattern? Breathe. Breathe, right? That's one of the first places we're going to start. And when it comes to when we feel and freeze, when you feel any of these responses, when you're looking at your budget, when you're getting ready to have a conversation with someone around money, when you're going to start to look at maybe your student loans, come back into your body, maybe focus on the soles of your feet and look behind you. It's actually really good for our nervous system to just be behind us, because these fight, flight, freeze responses are from when we were out in the savannah being chased by lions. It's very much like our body is ready to run. So when you look behind you, you're telling your dorsal system, you're telling your nervous system that there's no one coming. Look at the exits. Look outside. Another thing that I've learned from Peter Levine, who is one of the pioneers in somatic work, is to look at something in your room that brings you pleasure. So I would look at these beautiful cempasúchil that I've got here because they're coming up on Dia de los Muertos. I would look at the cempasúchil and just to look at something beautiful. Maybe look at a picture of loved ones, right? Just to soothe yourself. And you don't have to push harder than you can. I see another one. These terms are intimidating, powerless, unknown about the way investing looks like for someone like me. And it's okay to feel like that today. It is good to see that coming up within you today. Because what we don't acknowledge, we can't change. What is it that James Baldwin says? Not everything can be changed. Not everything can be changed, but we can only change what we face. Nothing can be changed until we face it, I think is part of what James Baldwin says. So I'm paraphrasing that, right? I just want to invite you again that even if today you've got the fight, flight, freeze coming up as we're looking at these very technical terms, it's good. It actually is good. It means that from there, you can choose something different going forward. You can sign up for that investing masterclass over 10 days. And maybe you do one every third day, right? Just to come into it slowly. And know that wherever you are on your journey with money, the fact that you're here with us, able to listen to this, either the recording or be here live, you have enough, right? Whether I remember talking with clients who literally just had the best month of their income month for their job. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs or people who are going through bankruptcy. Like regardless of it, it can be very scary, whether it's a high or a low, because it's outside of our comfort zone. And yet we can move through it. Okay. So when you're feeling yourself get activated, focus on the soles of your feet. Look behind you. Look at the exits. That's number 2. And then the third suggestion is to look at something beautiful. Look at something soothing. And then decide. Do you want to stay with what you're doing? It could be a conversation. It could be looking at your budget. Or do you want to schedule a time to come back to it? Okay. Any thoughts, questions? Maybe a drink of water. So although I didn't do the exercise of writing it down, imagine I've got this sheet full of different terms. I want you to look at them and pick three things, 3 terms that you either want to learn more about or that you are ready to take action on. Okay. Integrating mental health, grounding exercises, and financial planning is remarkable. Thank you for that. It's just that I've seen so many people like suffer around money as somebody who works with, because I've worked with clients who are making $500,000 a year 500,000 a year, and were still living month to month. They had no savings. They were one disaster away from not being able to cover their monthly expenses. And I've lived with clients who are earning 50,000 as a household were able to retire with millions of dollars, right? There is another book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Let me write that down for everyone. The Psychology by Morgan Housel. And he doesn't do somatics, but I like the stories that he has in there. Because money, and he says, money looks like math because it has numbers, but money is much more like psychology. One of the stories that I share on my website is that just like, because food, right? Food looks like it's nutrition. It's just calories. But we all know food is much more than simply nutrition. It's memories that we have with family. It's pleasure, right? Just like with food, money's got a lot more things going on. That's why I love bringing in the mental health portion of it. And I learned a lot reading Wealth Warrior. I'm not familiar with that one, but I'm going to write it down for myself. There's always so much to learn in this field. That's why I love it. Okay. I'm going to share. Does anybody want to add in their voice? I'm happy to see the chats, but I also love hearing from people. If there's any questions that are open right now, we're halfway through today.
Did you pose a question and ask us to give 3 things? Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, so look at the list of things that you wrote down for yourself, all of the money terms, and pick 3 things that you either want to learn more about or that you feel ready to take action on.
And then you want us to put our answers in the chat?
No, that's for you. That's for you. That's for you. And actually, this is a perfect time for us to go into breakout sessions. So I'm gonna break us out for about 6 minutes into groups of either 2 or 3. And you can share what you feel comfortable sharing. Right? So when we're sharing about money, it's a very taboo subject. It's very private, but maybe share one thing that you've learned in the 30 minutes we've had together and one thing that you want to learn more about or take action, right? Just for everyone to get a chance to share a little bit. So I'm going to start that. And you will be back in 5 minutes. I'll also be here. If anybody wants to return to the main room and rather not be in a breakout session, that works too. Welcome back. Just a little bit of money music to make us laugh. Thank you for everyone. It can be so hard to talk about this topic because it's so private. So we need to bring a little bit of levity into it, right? I was just sharing with everyone that like when you're doing maybe your weekly money check-in, you're going to look at your budget, you're getting ready to negotiate your raise with your employer, have some music, maybe have like a playlist of music that makes you feel like you own your power with money. Again, because it's very much like money is much more about psychology than the numbers, right? There are ways to make this fun. I would love for us to take maybe like the next 5 minutes, 7 minutes to just hear from people either through the chat or share your voice of like, what was it like to have this conversation? Are there any questions that came up? So just feel free to unmute yourself, throw in your voice.
I think it's so important to share our experiences and to always engage in learning, like reading the books, like thank you to the young lady that referred the Wealth Warrior. I just reserved it at my library. Also, the the millionaire next door, like what you just said about somebody earning 50,000, but because they're wise, and that's what the millionaire next door is about. And then also like rich dad, poor dad. It's just a matter of learning the terminology and gaining the education. And I'm speaking from experience because I come from a background where we were told, and I remember hearing the word in Spanish when we would talk about money at home. Our parents immediately said, "No hay, there is none," which was a lie. But it took me a long time to overcome that. So I think it's really good to what we did a long time ago was that we would silence our mind, and then the person would say money, and the first thing that would pop into your mind, that was your belief system. And that's how I discovered that, so I had to eradicate that lie. But I love talking about the subject. I have an accounting company, and I'm always seeking to learn more, especially the stock market. And our savings accounts, the interest rates are so low, so we've got to do more with it. So everybody in the group, Deanna, did say that we are so happy to be here, and thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. This is my life's work. I love making money fun, easy to understand. I love making money so easy to understand that people forget about it, right? When it's already working, it's copacetic, you're not thinking about it. And that's where I want people to get to. And that's so true. If you grow up hearing no I, you automatically think no I, even when CI, even when there is money, right? So how do we learn what those stories are and change them? Thank them for what they brought us, because my parents are immigrants. For a lot of us that immigrate, like there is a period of transition where it can be very tight, and then it isn't, right? And how do we thank the tools that helped us, the skills that helped us go through that time, and then upgrade them for when our life changes? And how do we bring in those tools again? Because money is very cyclical. It comes and it goes. So, Alexis, do you want to share something? I see you unmuted yourself. And I love the call for a place, a group in Amigahood where we can continue to share our money journey. I would love that. I would love that. I would love to be one of the hosts for it. Maybe because there's many of us here in Amigahood that can share, that can help you be, because a lot of the times a money coach is like a guide, right? We're not going to tell, like I always tell people, I'm all excited. I'm jumping all over myself. I am an expert in money, but I am not an expert in your life, right? I want to give you the tools. I want to help you understand them. But at the end of the day, you get to decide what's right for you. It's kind of like when you go to a nutritionist or a personal trainer, they're going to know what the techniques are, but how you apply them to where you are in your life today is very personal. And owning your power with money is knowing that one size does not fit all. Who you are when you're a single woman is going to be very different than who you are when you're a grandmother of 10. Right? Who you are when you have family in another country that you're supporting is going to be very different than when your family's all in the same country with you and you're supporting each other. Right? Whatever your money situation is now, know that it will change. Okay. Anyone else who wants to add their voice before I share another slide?
I just put in the chat, the danger of certain belief systems, because of that belief system that I had of no I. So when money would come in, my subconscious would make me feel uncomfortable. I had to spend the money unwisely to make that belief true. So it's just so important that we work on our psychology as well.
That's so true. I remember working with a client who was finally able to get themselves like an emergency fund. And she said, that it was so like having the emergency fund and not spending it felt really uncomfortable. And we laughed about, I was teasing her a little bit that it kind of felt like a hot potato. You know, that hot potato game where nobody wants to have it. Sometimes it feels like having money, like just having cash can feel uncomfortable. And what you were sharing, Nancy, about the no I, there's this book called Scarcity, Why Having Too Little Means So Much. And this is a psychology research book done by two professors. And they researched time, money, and affection, right? And they say that if you grow up in an environment where sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't, people often respond in two extreme ways. They'll either spend it as soon as they get it because they don't know when it's going to come again, or they'll hoard it. And I'm pretty crass around this. I say that people can sometimes either have money diarrhea, where like they're not keeping it, it's just kind of going through them. They're not even picking up the nutrients from it, or they're money constipated, where they're just so tight around it, they won't even buy themselves a new pair of shoes. Right. And those are very extreme, but I'm sure we can all remember a time when we've been in either of those places or know people who are in either of those places. And I see some big smiles on this, right? What you want to have with money is balanced, right? So you got to take your probiotics, you got to do the right things. And again, this is going to be specific to each of us. But no, understanding intellectually what happened when we were young is really important. And then somatically in our body, being able to tolerate the discomfort so that we can listen to it, because the discomfort is there because there's something it wants to teach you. It's something it wants to share, right? I love that we all grow. Amigahood is really like, there's so much personal development in this space, and money is a part of it. We all know, like, how do we reclaim our inner child? How do we heal them? And money is often part of that conversation, right? I see this feelings of self-worth and even shame about earning more than your family. The biases, like, it can lead you to self-sabotage. I definitely know that. I remember when I was in college, I worked at Merrill Lynch, which is a broker-dealer, and my hourly income was higher than my mom's. And I didn't know what to do. It felt, she was proud of me, and it was also really weird, right? For like a 19-year-old. So I hear you, I get that, and we get to work through it, right? So I want to read out loud the last two chats that came in. Someone told me not to think this way, but I feel that money is hard. As a child, everything was scarce, and I think my mom, single mother, did her best, but we didn't know how to do better. We were couch surfing, sometimes very little food. I'm always anxious about it. This approach makes you feel better. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing what that was like. And sometimes even if it wasn't us that were living with food insecurity, I know my dad did, right? So my dad sometimes went to bed hungry, and that can still affect us. So if you're a parent and your child isn't going through food insecurity, but you did, know that it can affect them. Not for us to feel guilty or shameful about it, but again, for us to be aware of it. Things can change. We all, every single one of us here, if you are attracted to We All Grow, to Amigahood, it's because you have experienced growth in your life. You have experienced something being difficult and then it becoming more easeful, more supportive. Always remember, what are the things that you've gone through in the past and that you still have those skills. You have those skills and you can apply them to this area of your life, to money. Okay, we all have what it takes to feel good about our money. We can all change our money situation. And part of the work that I do as a wealth manager, I haven't talked about that much, but as a wealth manager, I work with people who want to invest their assets in a way that's environmentally sustainable, that's socially sustainable, There is someone I follow, her name is Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, and she says that without inner change, without you changing your mindset, there can be no outer change. Without you feeling comfortable around having money, you can't build an emergency fund because you'll sabotage yourself without meaning to. However, without collective change, and here these are my politics, not Amiga Hood's politics, but without childcare, without healthcare, without access to education, no individual change matters. It doesn't matter how much I save, I still can't take care of my parents' retirement, right? And as Latinas, we often have that, right? Our parents often come from families where the family took care of elders, and then moving to the US, it's different, it's difficult. And we have to have those conversations earlier rather than later. Right? So I want us all to remember that individuals can't solve collective problems, which is why me, your humble servant aquí, a sus servicios, I work with a lot of financial planners to create systemic change. So if anybody's interested in working with financial planners who are also looking at our collective well-being, feel free to reach out. Okay. So we've got 9 minutes left. I love this conversation. I love everything what people have brought in. I'm going to share one more slide, 2 more slides. And hopefully we'll have a second to maybe check out a little bit in the chat. This is what I call your money in full bloom. I work with a lot of creatives. And if I start to talk to them about like the technical terms of money, you guys experience that in the Marie Kondo exercise, they kind of feel sleepy, right? They want to look at their phone. They want to run out of the room, honestly. So I've created this graphic that's gentler, that's softer. And it's divided into 3 sections. At the bottom, we have your nourished soil, right? Like, what does a tree need to be blooming? The first thing I have here is understanding your money history. At the beginning of the presentation, we talked about lessons learned, right? That's the compost. Our nourished soil needs compost in it too. Knowing how to have open money conversations. That fight, flight, freeze response that I talked about, being aware of it in yourself, and then being aware of it in the person that you're talking to, right? If you're going to have a conversation with your parents about retirement, be aware of them too. Because again, we're not just heads, we're bodies, we're souls, we're hearts, right? So knowing how to navigate that is really important. And then being rooted in your values. Understanding your values makes money management a lot easier. In fact, whenever I work with people on budgeting, I ask them to identify their top 5 values. I have a little exercise we go to. Because in that, like for example, one of my values is adventure. If you look at my bio, I was a digital nomad for 2 years. I was traveling all over Latin America and the US because adventure is really important. So I made sure that my budget had a section for adventure, right? Family is also important. So I made sure to have an account that was set up for family emergencies. And knowing that those were my values made it easier for me to say no to eating out when I didn't want to do it, when it didn't really matter, right? Or to say no to whatever else it was, because it's always kind of like a balance. Given the amount of income that you have right now, how you spend it, you want to make sure that that reflects your values. That's why it's so important to identify those. We spent some time today on the past, present, and future of money, and I have it all like this lined out on the same timeline, because it's kind of like when it comes to money, the decisions you've made in the past, any debt you might carry, your employment history is going to affect your present, right? Because if 1/3 of your income is going towards debt, then you only have 2/3 to be left with, to work with. And then the future, your long-term, mid-term, short-term goals, kind of risks that you have to take care of, that's also going to impact your present. and your present's going to affect your future. It's very much kind of like a self-referential time loop is sometimes what I call it. Like, and that's why it makes money so confusing, because all of these different times are happening at the same time. Right. And as Latinos, we often come from a culture that's more, I think it's called polychromatic. It means that time expands. So mañana se cuida a sí mismo, no? Tomorrow will take care of itself is a lot of what I heard from my upbringing and what I hear from other Latinos. So learning how to upgrade that to match our financial system, because living in the US, it's a different kind of management system, money system. Learning how to have those work together is really important. And this is where we have a lot of the tools. And then the last thing, or a lot of the technical things live in this middle range. And the last thing is learning the sun that you're going towards is your fullest self. And here I have two main things: cultivating community with shared values. When you're changing any part of your life, it can feel very isolating. It can feel like you're all alone, right? So the fact that you're here together, think of other, like maybe there's an amiga here that you recognize, and maybe you can connect after this conversation and maybe start a little bit of accountability with each other, right? Or just congratulate each other on being here. Know that you're not alone as you change how you do money. Another really important part is voicing your best life and your capacity to get there. This is knowing what your goals are and knowing that they're possible, right? So when I asked everyone to Marie Kondo their things and write out 3 things they wanted to do, either learn about or do, see if you can schedule those in the next month or before the end of the year. You know, because it's very much like getting started is one of the biggest things. And because we have 4 minutes and I want us to have time to reach out, I'm going to skip over to, I'm going to just put a little plug in for a course I'm creating. And this is called La Bougette de la Lune. The word budget is originally comes from an old, I think it's from the 1500s, a French term that means bougette, little bag. And it's just a little bag to put your coins in and your IOUs. It's not a way to like measure your self-worth or your ability to adult. It's just a little coin to track things. And I combine that with la luna, the moon, because budgets are actually very cyclical, right? When we look up at the moon, sometimes it's a new moon, it's a full moon, a waning moon, and it's going through different phases. And our money can very much be like that. And knowing how to live in those cycles will help us feel more empowered. This will be probably available next month. And I'm going to have, so if you want to sign up for it, there is, let me put it in the chat. There's going to be 8 free trial codes for anyone who's interested in signing up and also giving me feedback, right? So you get the course for free in exchange for feedback. I offer everything on a sliding scale. So I haven't finalized what the pricing of this will be, but it'll be on a sliding scale because it's important to me personally and for like systemic change that this be accessible to many people. And a last little plug, if you want to schedule a 30-minute heart-centered money coaching call, and again, this is just the call for any questions that you might have. We went through a lot in this hour. Feel free to do so. You can find me over at Wealth Tender, all the colors. Wealth Tender has lots of money coaches, not just myself. So you can look through Wealth Tender and see who on there makes a good match for you. Maybe you want to work with someone who's local in person. But if you want to work with me, this is where you can find the link to schedule a time. And we have 1 minute. As we wrap up this last minute, I want to really thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. I want to thank you for taking the time to like be present in the breakout sessions. It's not always easy to have these conversations. And for everyone who contributed in the chat or who lifted their voice or who just listened today. So please feel free to like on the chat, maybe say 1 word of how you're feeling as we check out.
Very wonderful. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. So needed.
My pleasure. I love this work. Thankful,
I just
inspired.
want to, I feel grateful and thank you so much for providing this space and again for implementing like that mental health aspect and all your resources. And it's really refreshing knowing that financial advisors are taking this approach because there's a direct connection. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Optimistic, appreciative, motivated. This is awesome. Well, Erika, I think I hand it over to you now, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Thank you so much, Diana. That was incredible. I think we all really needed it and learned so much. So, and especially like Annette said, like that mindful practice behind it and just being able to like regulate our nervous system around money is like so important. And just thank you so much for being with us today and sharing all of your knowledge. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, amigas, for joining us today. Thank you so much. I'm like so happy that we got to have Diana with us. And yeah, we hope to see you at next month's Amigas Mentor as well. Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you, amigas. Adios. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.